Well, my name is Giancarlo Romero Fuxa. This is a little video introducing myself. I think it's fair for you to start listening to me and how do I speak English. I mean, if I'm about to become your teacher, you might as well want to know how do I speak the language, so you get a model of how you will be speaking the language, right? So yeah, my name is Giancarlo Romero. As I said before, I'm from Peru. I was born in 1995, so I'm 28 at the time I'm recording this video. And how did I fell in love with the language was when I was 6 years old. I used to listen to this pop music group called NSYNC, and I used to love those guys. Like I always wanted to sing like them, but I was 6 years old and I only spoke Spanish, excuse me, because my parents are from Peru and I have no relative from foreign relative at the time. Well, right now I have an uncle who is from England. Well, I met him when I was 15, so it's not part of the equation here of how I learned English. But when I was 6 years old, I discovered this group and I got really into it. Like I really wanted to sing like them because I love singing. By the way, I take singing lessons, so I'm kind of becoming a very good singer. Well, so I'm starting to go for the branches. So when I met this group, I really wanted to sing like them, and I decided that I have to learn how to talk like they do in order to sing like they do. But because if you want to sing in a language, you have to speak the language first, right? Or at least I that's what I thought at the time, and that's what I think right now too. So I started learning English on my own, like any kiddo do. They listen to something, they repeat what they listen to. That's exactly how we learned Spanish, by the way. We learned the language out of our mother's mouth and our father's mouth. The way they spoke back then, it's how we speak now. And well, usually, because we also learn from our friends. Then when we get a little bit older, we start taking their accent, the way they speak, you know. But when you're a kid, you start learning like your parents do, so you repeat what they say. And that's exactly whenever you listen to a kid speaking whatever he's speaking, saying whatever he's saying, you start realizing, okay, that kid, if that kid, what I meant is, if that kid is saying a curse word, you start realizing, okay, maybe that kid is saying a curse word because his parents or her parents, in case the kid is a girl, they usually say curse words for sure, right? Like that's what we think. So yeah. So what was I talking about? Yeah. Now how the kids learns languages. So that's how I learned the language myself. And then in the meantime, while I was doing all these things, repeating phrases, listening to music, repeating what they say, watching movies, watching Disney Channel, which by the way was one of my favorite TV shows. Well, it's not TV channels to watch. I also was taking classes at my school, the typical grammatical rules, and I found the grammatical rules really easy because I was really familiar with the language. So whenever a teacher was trying to say something, like they were trying to explain something, like we use do and does, it was like, I've seen that one before. So I felt pretty familiar with the grammatical of the language, not because I learned it and because I studied it when I was 6 years old. You cannot study when you are 6 years old because you are just starting to study something, that you know what I mean. So there's no way on earth that I was learning grammatical rules on my own, and that's why the grammatical rules at school were easy. No, they were easy because I already was connected with the language, because I was learning it in the natural way. And that's exactly what we can do now that we are older, like we are adults. We can learn following that same natural process that we followed in order to learn our language. We can follow that same process now that we're adults. And there's nothing really crazy about that. We all can do that because we were born to speak languages. Okay, so well, I will keep on telling my story. So when I was 13 years old, okay, when I grew up and I was 13 years old, I was a very good English speaker. I didn't know it back then because I never had a friend from a foreign country. Not my parents, not my brothers and sisters. Nobody spoke English back then, so I was the only one learning on myself. And what happened is that we received a foreign student from Germany. His name was Xavier Wagner, and this student from Germany, he only spoke English and German, of course, because he's from Germany, but he didn't speak Spanish. So I watched it. I watched this event as an opportunity to practice my English, to practice my English with him. So that's why I started to do. We kind of started having conversations every single day. But the first time that I had a conversation with him in English, I felt like, oh, I'm speaking English. How am I doing it? I've never spoke English before because I've never had, well, maybe on my own, my own thoughts and stuff like that. But I never had the opportunity to talk to another person in English. So I was really, really excited having this conversation with Wagner, with Xavier, which his last name is Wagner. And after that, I felt like, okay, I can speak English. Maybe I can teach my friends too. So I started teaching my friends English, like helping them on resolving the grammatical exercises that they had in their book, or helping them on passing the exams. Yeah, we used to cheat a lot on giving them the answers during the exams. I will give them the answers of the English exams, and they will give me the answers of the maths exams, because I kind of like the math, kind of like the numbers, but it was not really my thing. So I really needed help on passing those exams. So they helped me, I helped them back. And usually when I taught them English and when I helped them with the exam and stuff like that, they used to treat me very well. Like, they gave me food, they were very happy. They used to say, man, you are the best. Thank you. So of course in Spanish they used to say it, but it was really cool. So I started loving teaching English because of how much appreciation I received out of my friends whenever I was teaching them. So that's how I started loving the language. And then when I was 19 years old, when I grew up and I was 19 years old, I gave my first class as an official teacher. Like my first class on an academy, I remember. And it was very nice. Like when I was a kid, like just like I was telling you, when I was 13 years old, I started teaching my friends English. And that's not just something that I did for 1 year. I did it for like the 4 years that I had to come on the high school. Yeah, that's how you would call it, secundaria. So when I was 13, I was in first grade of secundaria, and yeah, it's kind of like 4 years till the quinto, the fifth of secundaria, if you will. So I was teaching them all along English. I was helping them all along with the English language. And I really love teaching them, just like I said before. So when I grew up and I was 19 years old, I was teaching the language on academies, and then I started teaching in a school. I remember back then when I was teaching English in a school, it was kind of crazy, because imagine this, like you are a kid who was at a school, and you're all kind of crazy, like making your teachers go crazy when you are in the school, right? So when I started teaching at a school, it was like the other side of the coin. you know. So I had to watch all these kids around me, like screaming and doing all these naughty things between them, like hitting one of the friends in the back of the head, and then again insulting one another, like usually kids are kind of crazy. I was a kid myself, you've been the kid yourself, so you know what I'm talking about. But I was living on the other side of the coin back then when I was teaching at a school. So that was a really crazy time. But I always taught English, like the grammatical stuff. But when I grew up to be 23 years old, when I was 23 years old, that's when I hit a fence, I hit a fence because now I had to taught adults, professionals who wanted to learn English in order to go to another country, or in order to get a better position in the jobs they had. They wanted to have a better job. So they really wanted to speak the language. They didn't want to pass grammatical exams. They didn't want to be like, hey, I know what the verb to be and the do and does do. But they really wanted to speak the language. So I started teaching them the way I taught before to the kids from the school and the other academies, which were based on the grammatical rules and stuff like that. So I started teaching these adults, these professionals, on how to speak the language, but I didn't teach anything else than the grammatical rules and the grammatical stuff, because that's what the academy told me that I had to do. So when I was teaching them all these grammatical rules and all this English theory, it was really hard for them to speak the language. And I really didn't know why. Like, I never thought what exactly or how exactly does teaching the do and does or all the other grammatical rules help the people to speak the language. I didn't know back then how do we do it? How does it do it? Because I myself didn't learn English that way. So I knew that something was off. Something was not working like it should. And I had to go through a really hard time trying to teach them how to speak the language when I was clearly not recognizing that I didn't know how I'm helping them. Like, I'm just teaching what they told me to teach. But I really don't know what I was doing in order to help them to speak the language. It's like, I know right now what do I have to do for my students to help them speak the language. Like, I really know how to do it because I implemented my own methodology. But back then I didn't know it. And not only that, I couldn't see anyone teaching the language. Like, they were trying to speak English for like 6 months, studying the language, studying the grammatical rules, and they weren't able to speak the language. So I got really mad, I got really sad, and it was really exhausting because no matter how much effort I put on explaining them, and no matter how good I was on helping them understand how the verb to be and the do and does work, I'm taking it as a reference for all the grammatical rules that exist. No matter how much effort I put into it, they weren't able to speak the language. So that's when I said, okay, here's something off. Like, this is not working at all. So I gotta start doing something else to help them to achieve the goal that they paid for. Like, they paid the academy, like, I don't know, like maybe $800 to speak the language, but they were not achieving it. So I said, okay, the academy is paying me. Of course, they are not paying me the $800, but they are paying me, and I'm being paid to help them to speak the language. So I gotta do something, because that's what I'm getting paid for. So started researching. I asked another teachers, how do they do to help their students speak the language? And when I asked them like this, it was kind of crazy because they were like, what? You're not supposed to teach them how to speak the language. You're supposed to teach them the verb to be, the grammatical rules, because that's what they need to learn. Okay, they were like 100 steps before me. Like they didn't even think about that that methodology didn't work. It was like I was the only awake and watching how all these people are trying to learn the language, but the thing that they're doing is not working at all. So I remember back then that I used to have some students who did learn the language. It was just the minimum, like from the 100 students that I had, I didn't have 100, I had like maybe 20, but I'm just giving a percentage example. It was like I have 100 students and only 4 to 10 are learning the language, and the other 90 are not learning anything. So I started to look at what they were doing besides receiving the information that I gave them through the classes. And it's pretty funny because what I found is that they were doing exactly what I did when I was a kid. So you have 100 students, and this is where it gets really crazy. You have 100 students, okay? And only 10% of them are learning the language. You are giving them all the same information, but only 10% of them are learning the language. So what is exactly that these 10 are doing that the other 90 are not doing? Or are they special people? Maybe that's why what they are learning English and the other 90% are not learning. Maybe that's the answer, right? No, that's not the answer. The truth is that these 10 people, they all, okay, no exceptions, they all, when they were kids, they used to like English just like I did, or they started listening to English music and they really tried to learn the lyrics of the songs, or they really like watching movies in English and they were really trying to memorize the words that the actors and the people who appeared on the movie said. So they were trying to do the same exact thing that I did when I was a kid, like listening and then repeating the phrases that I listened to. That's what they were doing. So you're telling me that I'm giving this methodology, this grammatical rules methodology, the traditional thing that people do to learn languages. I'm giving this information, which is supposed to help them speak the language. I'm giving this information to 100 people, but only 10% of them are learning the language. Not because of the theory that I'm giving them, because these 10 people are doing something else. So what do you think? Is the methodology the thing that makes people speak English, or is the thing that these people do and what I did when I was a kid what makes them learn the language? It was like aha moment, like what a aha moment is. Aha moment is like you've been trying to analyze something, you've been trying to understand something, you've been analyzing it, and then you find the answer and you say like aha, that's an aha moment. Okay, so I found the answer and I said, okay, I have to do it. I have to do it. I have to do it. Like I have to really research what these people were doing. And well, they were not doing anything else that I didn't do myself when I was a kid. So I started researching on different platforms on the internet, on books, on how do we learn languages, like different methods. The traditional method didn't work and still is not working at all. So back then I was really looking for a different option, a different way of learning English. And that's when I created a recipe, okay, my secret recipe. And I gave this recipe to one of my students. And this student, who actually was about to go to another place here in Peru, to La Selva. Okay, I don't remember which city he was going to, but he was going there because of vacation, and he was going there for a month. So I wouldn't be able to give them the information for a month. He will not be able to assist to class for a month. So I told him, Jose, why don't you try this recipe, this secret recipe, for a month, and then when you come back, you tell me how it was. So Jose told me, okay, I'm going to try it. So I gave him this secret recipe, which is actually just watching a cartoon for kids, but in a different way, like not trying to analyze the grammatical rules and many other things that I will not go into detail here because this video will be kind of maybe an hour video. So Jose went to La Selva, to this city that I don't remember the name of, And then when he came back 30 days later, things happened just as usual. Like he came back, then he assisted to the class. And when I get into the room, because we used to give the classes in a room, okay, little rooms with only 3 to 4 people, not too many, like not 20, not 25, like 3 to 4 people. When I got into the room, or you might call it a classroom as well, but it was really, really small, so it's not like a classroom. Well, So when I got into the room, I watched Jose, and I asked him, like, how are you doing? Like, I'm telling you right now in English. And he was like, I'm fine. And then I asked him about his vacation. How was, if he did have fun on vacation, what did he do with his family, and all these many things that I really wanted to know back then. And I started to notice that something was different, because before Jose went on vacation, when I spoke English to him, he was like, like this kind of face, like he's trying to find out what I'm saying. But when he came back and I was asking them on his vacation, and if he had a really good time with his family and stuff, it was like this, like, like I'm understanding. Yeah, okay, yeah, it was fine. His eyesight was very different. Like the way he moved his eyes, it was very different. His facial expression was very different. So I knew the recipe was working on him, because then we had a complete 40-minute chat on English. Like this video is only 22, 23 minutes long. Like we had a conversation of 40 minutes and he understood everything I said. Well, like maybe not everything, maybe not like every single word, but he understood everything that I told him. So something that I couldn't be able to reach on 6 months' time, when I was teaching him English the traditional way, I made it happen in only 1 month. Okay, can you imagine that? Only 1 month. So I knew it back then. I knew back then that this secret recipe was the thing for other students to learn the language. So I started applying with the other students. I was starting to get really good results. Then I quit that job because I hated that my boss used to push me on teaching the students the grammatical rules and all the agenda that they had. So I quit my job, and then I started my own thing. I started my own methodology. And right now, as I'm recording this video, I helped, I don't know how many students. I had like maybe 400 students since I started this movement, which started in 2022. But I helped many people on learning the language in less than a year and being able to speak it as well. Of course, they are not, maybe they do not speak as good as I do in 1 year when they are starting from zero, but they are able to communicate. They are able to understand very well when I'm speaking to them, even when I'm talking to them, they understand very well what I say, and I'm very sure that it happens even to many people that didn't even told me that it helped them, because they never reach out to me, because they were my students, or because they were my students but they were not like, hey, I accomplished this, because that's not what they got into my program for. They got into my program to get a better job, to be able to speak the language, to be able to have a normal life on USA, Canada, etc. So yeah, that's my story. Kind of a long video, but well, I just wanted to let you know how it all happens. And of course, why wouldn't I try to say it in English, So yeah, that'll be it. Thank you for staying this long. Appreciate you. And if you really want to learn English the natural way and be able to speak the language, maybe not as good as I do, or maybe you can do it too. It depends on your English level right now and how many time and effort you put into it. But believe me, learning English is very easy, and you don't need all that grammar, all those many things, these grammatical rules and stuff like that. They don't work. They will only make you confused and stuff like that. So yeah, reach out to me if you feel like, and have a wonderful day.